So mise en place is a French cooking term that translates to everything in its place. So what that means is getting all the ingredients, all the equipment that you're going to need for a recipe together in one place before you get started. And that process just helps you eliminate any mistakes that you might make along the way. So we're going to go through that two-step process together for our chocolate chip cookie recipe. So first we're going to get all the ingredients we're going to need, and then second we're going to get all of the equipment that we need. So let's go ahead and get started on those ingredients.
Alright, so it's time to scale our first ingredient in the chocolate chip cookie recipe, and that is going to be butter. So I'm going to start here with this mechanical scale to show you how that works. So right now, if you can see this black line on the outside, hopefully you can see there are numbers. Right now, the little red line is pointing towards 0, so that means there's no weight on here. Now, if I'm gonna scale butter, it needs to go into some sort of vessel. I don't wanna put it right on here because then I'm gonna have to clean it between each ingredient. So I'm gonna put it in a bowl. Now, when I put that bowl on there, hopefully you saw that red arrow moved. So now it's reading 12 ounces. Well, I need to scale butter, and I could do the math to figure out how far I need to go. So 12 ounces plus the 6.25 ounces that I need, but that's a little complicated to do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna tear our scale. So by tearing our scale, we reset it to 0. So all we have to do for this scale is turn the knob, and you can see that the black ring around the outside moves. And we're just gonna line up that red arrow with our 0. And then we're gonna take it to 6.25. So I know that each stick of butter weighs about 4 ounces, so I can put one stick in, and I'm just a little under 4. So then this second stick of butter, I know I'm only gonna need part of it. So I'm gonna use this tool. This tool is called a bench scraper, and it's just a tool that's gonna help me cut it. It's nowhere near sharp as a knife, so I don't have to get out a cutting board, but it's gonna easily go through my butter. And that gave me just over 5 ounces, so I still need a little bit more. And now I'm at 6. So in between each of my marks, there's each of my numbers, there's little marks. There's gonna be a 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75 between each. So I need to go just past my 6 to the next little line to my 0.25, and that will get me there. So that's my butter. And you can notice that I put this in a pretty big bowl, so obviously I could fit a lot more in here. And that's because I know that I'm gonna mix the recipe in this bowl. I could have scaled it into a separate bowl and then transferred it, but that's one more dish, and in this industry we always have to think about ways to be efficient. So that's a really great way to be efficient. Another great way to be efficient is called stack scaling. So stack scaling means scaling multiple ingredients in one bowl. So I know in my first step, I'm gonna cream together my butter and my 2 sugars, my white sugar and my granulated sugar. So that means that I can combine them all in this bowl. Now for these mechanical scales, they can't hold a ton of weight. So if I push down here, it you hear that noise? So that's where it's capped out at. So sometimes I can't continue to stack scale but so much because there's just gonna be too much weight. So a lot of times, in most bakeries now, people use digital scales. So it's very similar. This is just digital. So I'm gonna turn it on. And then same as before, if I put my bowl on there, I'm not sure, yeah, it looks like you can see that there's a weight here. So I can do the same thing. Remember how I teared out by moving the knob so it's 0? I'm just gonna hit the tear button, and then it comes to 0. I also wanna make sure I'm looking over here to the side. So digital scales, typically you can use different units. So this one is kilograms, pounds, ounces, and pounds and ounces. So this recipe is in ounces all the way. So I'm gonna keep it how my little arrow is on ounces right now. So my next ingredient is sugar, which I'm gonna get out of my bin. And I need 5.25 ounces. Now this scale doesn't do to the 0.25, so I'll get to 5.2 ounces. And this sugar has been sitting a little bit, so it's gotten a little clunky, but that's okay. We'll cream it out. Not worried about it, but it looks like I'll have to break up that giant lump. So whenever you're stack scaling, you kind of just want to be careful to make sure you understand your ingredients. So this is something I knew I could kind of pick out if I overscaled, which I did. But sometimes you can't do that. Like if you were pouring milk and water into the same container, you can't just pick out the water. So you definitely want to be careful whenever you're stack scaling. All right. All right, so that's my white sugar. And now I need the same quantity of my brown sugar. So what do I need to do? That's right, I need to tare my scale again. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna hit tare, and it goes back to 0. And now I can get to my 5.2 ounces of brown sugar. I just want to slowly add it again. With solid ingredients like this, I can kind of take it out if I need to. Sometimes this brown sugar kind of clumps up, it almost makes it easier. Great. So this is all the ingredients in my first step of the creaming method. So that's all I can stack scale in this bowl. So now I can look on to my next step of the creaming method, which is to add egg. So in the creaming method, it's really important that everything is room temperature, and eggs typically are refrigerated. So what I've done with this egg is I've actually set it in warm water just for a little while to bring it to room temperature. You could leave your eggs out, but that takes a while for them to come to room temperature, and it's very difficult to plan that if you're in a bakery setting and you're constantly cooking all day long. So this is a really great method to get to room temperature eggs pretty quickly. You would not want to microwave an egg to get to room temperature, because then it would just start to cook and then you'd have scrambled egg cookies, and that'd be gross. So very important though to keep it in the shell when you do this, because you can't really take it out once if you've cracked it in here. So I'm just gonna shake off the water. I never wanna crack this egg, like pour this water out and then reuse this. So typically if there's ever any salmonella or any contaminants on an egg, they're found on the surface, not on the inside. So if this egg had gotten contaminated somehow at the factory or something, it's now in that bowl. So I don't want to use this bowl again until I've cleaned it. And going back to that part, a lot of times, and I grew up this way too, cracking an egg on the side of the bowl. It's not a great idea to do that, because if we crack it on the side of the bowl, it can force the shell into the egg, which can introduce contaminants into our egg that weren't already inside the egg. So we don't want to do that. Another thing that can happen, you're more likely to break the egg yolk, which in this recipe, it doesn't matter if it breaks or not, but a lot of recipes, you need to separate the egg whites and the egg yolks. So a better practice is to use a flat surface. So I typically use my counter, and as you get better and better, you can crack it with one hand, boop, just like that. Let it all come out. And then we're gonna throw this eggshell away, and I'm gonna wash my hands. Our next step of the creaming method uses the dry ingredients. So we're gonna stack scale all of our dry ingredients together, and we're gonna start with our flour. So I have my mechanical scale here, and I'm gonna add my bowl. And as you can see, the red arrow turns, and it just so happens that I got it right. Hopefully you can see the red arrow is right on the 0. So now I'm gonna scale my flour, and I need 10.5 ounces of flour. So that means I'm gonna go until it's all the way to the 10. The next little mark would be 10.25, and then the 1 in the very middle between 10 and 11 is 10.5. So I'm gonna go all the way and there we go. That's my flour. So the next ingredient we can stack scale is salt, and that's gonna be measured by volume. We need a ½ teaspoon. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna very gently pour it over a bowl. I don't wanna waste a lot because ingredients aren't for free, but I do wanna catch anything that I don't need. And then I'm gonna use a straight edge to level it off, just like that. So I know I have the exact right amount. So I'm gonna add this. And then when I'm done, or if we were in class, we'd keep using this bowl. I'm just gonna pour it back into my salt container. So I'm gonna do the same thing with my baking soda, but instead of over the bowl, I can just do it because I have a big container. I can just do it right over the surface. Sometimes baking soda can get a little clumpy, especially if it's been open for a while. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it in my hand and I'll just kind of smoosh it, make sure I don't have any clumps. So that way it incorporates nice and evenly. So our last ingredient is probably the most iconic ingredient in chocolate chip cookies, and that's the chocolate chips. So same thing as before, put our bowl on our scale, make sure it is set at 0, which is to tare it. And then we're gonna measure our chocolate chips, and I need 8 ounces. So I'm gonna go all the way until I'm right at the 8 line. Wow, and there's exactly 8 ounces left in this bag. How nifty is that? Perfect. So now I have all of the ingredients that I need for this recipe. So now it's time to gather the equipment. Okay, when you're thinking about what equipment you need for your mise en place, it's important to think about the steps of the recipe all the way through to the end to make sure that you have everything you need. So we need some sort of mixer for this recipe. Typically in the industry, we would use a stand mixer, but today I'm going to show you how to use a hand mixer in case that's what you have at home and you would like to use that. We're also going to need a spatula so that we can scrape down the bowl to make sure that everything's incorporating evenly. You're also going to need some sort of scoop or spoons, perhaps, if you're doing this at home, to portion out our cookie dough at the end. So now we have all of the equipment that we need, and we have all of the ingredients that we need. So we are ready to get started making our chocolate chip cookies.